A black car rolled behind a noisy bus and kept its lights low. The driver's hands were steady, but his heart punched like a drum. Inside the car sat Noah Carter, the man newspapers called the Stone Hotel King. He watched his maid step off the staff shuttle in the cool night air, a slim woman with a plain gray sweater, a worn tote bag, and a pace that said she knew where she was going. For weeks she left right at 8, never late, never early, never asking for a ride. Tonight, Noah told his driver to keep distance and turn off the radio. He wasn't sure why he cared. He only knew something in him wanted to know what she did when the mansion lights went dark. The maid crossed the street where the street lamps flickered, then turned into a narrow lane beside a silent church. Noah leaned forward. He expected secrets, maybe trouble. Instead he saw a small door with a hand-painted sign, House of Second Chances. The maid slipped inside. Noah stepped out of the car alone and followed, his breath catching at the sound that struck him from behind the door, soft voices reading, pots clinking, and a tiny choir whispering, "You are loved." His chest felt tight. He reached the doorway and saw her. The maid, the quiet girl he barely noticed, stood in front of 20 tired faces, swept back braids held with a cheap gold clip, chalk dust on her fingers, teaching adults how to read their own names. "Sound it out, miss," she said gently to a grandmother. "You can do it." Noah froze. His lips parted. He had followed her to catch a mistake. Instead, he had followed her into light. If you were Noah, what would you do? Hit like for more stories that change hearts and tell me, where are you watching from right now? Noah's day had started like every other. Meetings stacked like bricks, voices talking about numbers, and faces smiling because he owned half the hotels on the island. He wore a dark suit you could see your face in and ate breakfast without tasting it. When he walked through the mansion, staff lifted their eyes and then dropped them. You like that? It meant things worked. It meant no one wasted his time with drama. The only person who did not lift her eyes was the new maid, the one HR sent with a short note. Hard worker. Quiet. Clean references. Her name was Ruth Allen. Ruth kept the pantry in straight lines and the silverware in perfect rows. She moved like a whisper. But 3 times that month, Noah noticed something small and strange. Once, he saw her slip leftover bread into her tote after asking the cook for permission. The second time, he saw her kneel and tie the shoelaces of the gardener's little boy when the child arrived with his father late in the evening to pick up pay. The third time, he overheard her on the back steps, speaking softly into her phone, saying, "I'm coming. Don't close the door. I'll be there." Her voice wasn't afraid. It was steady, like someone who holds up a wall so others can rest. Noah didn't like questions he couldn't answer. It bothered him that he didn't understand her. In his world, people either wanted something from him or worked for him. Ruth did neither. She never asked. She only gave. That afternoon, after a board call about a new tower in Victoria Island, he saw her put a small envelope in the staff charity box by the elevator. He waited until she left, then opened it, ready to see a note asking for help. Instead he found 3 small bills and a scribbled line, "For the night class, markers and rice." The handwriting was neat, stubborn. Noah folded the envelope again, closed the box, and felt heat rise at the back of his neck. What night class? What rice? He said nothing. He told his driver to keep the car ready by 8. The city at night was a different animal, bright on the surface, tired under the skin. The car followed Ruth past shops closing like eyelids and small boys kicking bottles down the gutter. She did not look around. She walked like a person who had done this path many times and would do it 100 more. When she reached the church lane and slipped inside the side hall, Noah stepped into the shadows and pushed the door a little. Warm air rolled over him, stew, soap, and chalk. Inside, long tables wore plastic covers. On them sat bowls, 3 pots, and a box of worn books. A paper chain of cut-out letters hung near a cracked window. "We can read. We can start again." Noah swallowed. He had built banquet halls with gold ceilings and marble floors. He had never built this. Ruth clapped twice. The room settled. "We'll start with sentences tonight," she said, smiling at a young man with strong hands and shy eyes. "Then rice. Promise." Laughter, small and true, bubbled around the tables. Noah stood behind a shelf of donated shoes and watched. Ruth drew a line on the board. "I believe I can learn." She did not rush them. She did not pity them. She celebrated every sound like it was a sunrise. When an old man with deep lines got stuck on the word believe, she whispered, "Break it, believe." "Good." He tried. He got it. He covered his face and chuckled, embarrassed at his own joy. Noah felt something move in his chest, a place that had been closed so long it forgot how to breathe. He did not clap. He did not step forward. He did something he hadn't done in years. He listened. After reading came food. Ruth moved between tables with plastic bowls and a wooden spoon. "Small first, then come back for more," she said. "We have a long night." A little girl peeked in through the door holding her baby brother, hair tied with one pink ribbon, dressed too small. Ruth's eyes softened. "Come," she said, guiding them to a chair. "You too." She set a bowl before the girl, then another before the baby, blowing on the hot rice to cool it. The girl's shoulders dropped like someone had set down a load. Noah's jaw tightened. He remembered the mansion's long table, full of fruit and tiny cakes, left untouched after meetings that ran too long. He thought of the leftovers wrapped in plastic and thrown out when no one asked for them. He felt ill for a second, like he had swallowed a stone the wrong way. A thin cough cut through the room. A teenage boy pulled his hoodie over his mouth. Ruth walked over, pressed a small inhaler into his hand and tapped his wrist. "Slow," she said. "Out." The boy obeyed and the coughing eased. "You remembered my inhaler?" he whispered. Ruth smiled. "I keep one in my bag. You forget. I know you." The boy looked down, hiding a grin. Noah stared at her tote, the same one he'd seen at the mansion. Markers and rice. An inhaler. It was a small bag. Somehow it carried a whole house. When the bowls were empty and the books were stacked, Ruth stood in the center and spoke like she was telling a secret to the ceiling. "I know life is heavy," she said. "But listen, we are not our bad days. And we are not what people called us when they were angry. Your mind is good. Your heart is strong. You can start again at any age." Heads nodded around the room. A woman with a hairnet wiped her eyes. A boy with scars on his knuckles looked at his shoes. Ruth pointed to the chain of letters. "You helped me hang this. We did it together." Her voice didn't tremble. It sang. A short man in a church polo stepped beside her. "We should thank our quiet helper," he said. Ruth brought day-old rolls from her workplace today, and the big pot came from a friend's donation. The group clapped. Ruth shook her head, a little shy. "It's nothing," she said. "I only carry. The giver is bigger than me." Noah felt a flinch at the word giver. He had given all his life, sponsorships, scholarships with his name on them, big checks. But this giving was different. This giving had a face and a hand and a steady, kind voice. The man in the polo rolled out a whiteboard on wheels. "Tomorrow is rent day for this hall," he said. "We are still short." He wrote a number. It was not big to Noah. It was a mountain to the people in that room. Ruth stepped forward and opened her small envelope. She slid her last bills into a plastic container and closed it fast like she was ashamed of the sound. "We will make it," she said simply. "We always do." A grandmother took off a tin ring and put it in. A teenage girl added 2 coins. No one looked at the floor. No one begged. They just stood a little taller, as if the act of giving raised the ceiling. Noah's palms tingled. He wanted to reach for his wallet, but he didn't move. Pride is a strange lock. He had come to catch. To catch meant to stand in the dark and watch, not to step into the light and be seen. He waited for the room to empty. When it did, Ruth began to clean with the same quiet care she used in his house. She stacked bowls, folded table covers, and swept the floor, humming under her breath. Noah wandered toward a corner where a corkboard held photos, notes, and a calendar with smudged squares. The first photo stopped him like a hand on his chest. It was old, edges curled. In it, a little girl with skinny arms stood between a smiling young woman and a tall nurse outside a clinic. But it was not the child that made Noah's breath fail. It was the young woman, brown eyes, crooked grin, a dimple he had kissed 1,000 times in another life. Lily. His late wife. The caption under the photo, written in the same neat, stubborn handwriting he had seen on the envelope, said, "First day I met Miss Lily at the clinic. She said, 'Keep going, Ruth.' I kept going." Noah's throat closed. He felt the room tilt, then right itself. He reached for the next photo and found Lily again, this time holding a box of books in the rain, Ruth under the same small umbrella, both laughing like old friends. Lily had died 7 years ago, a soft fall after a hard fight. Noah had buried himself in work so he would not bleed out under the weight of her absence. He had not visited the clinic since the funeral. He had not asked her staff who they had met, who they had helped, what promises she had left behind. He had closed the door to the past like a safe. Now the past stood on a corkboard in a drafty hall, smiling with wet hair. Ruth came up behind him and stopped when she saw what he was looking at. Her fingers tightened on the broom. Her voice, when it came, was barely a thread. "She saved my mother," Ruth said. "A long time ago. Before the big hotels. Before everything." Noah turned. His voice was sad. "You knew my wife?" Ruth nodded. "I knew her, Mercy," she said. "She saw me when nobody did. She looked me in the eyes and said I was not a mistake. She gave me books. She paid for my school fees when I almost dropped out. She told me I would help others one day. When she got sick, I visited her. I promised her I would keep the class going. I promised I would never stop carrying hope where it looked thin." Ruth swallowed. "When I saw your name on the job posting, I cried in the bus. I took it because I thought maybe this is how I will say thank you, by caring for what she loved." She looked down. "By caring for you too, even if you never know my name." Noah's heart cracked so quietly he almost missed the sound. He had rooms full of trophies and walls full of awards. He had a picture of Lily on his study shelf he never touched because touching it made him shake. He had never imagined that the quiet maid who swept his stairs at dawn had once stood under the same small umbrella with the woman who taught him how to love. He felt shame burn his face. Shame for following, shame for doubting, shame for every plate of untouched fruit and every garbage bag of food that could have fed this room. He opened his mouth to speak and stopped when Ruth reached for a folder tucked behind the board. It was old, edges soft. On the front, in Lily's neat hand, was a line that pinned Noah to the floor. "For Ruth, open when you are tired." Ruth touched the folder like a small treasure. Her voice dropped. "On her last week she gave me this," she said. "I didn't open it for years. I thought I had to be strong. But last month, when the landlord raised the rent for the hall and I didn't know what to do, I opened it." She slid out a letter. The paper was thin and full of Lily's familiar curve. Ruth held it carefully. "There is a message in here for you too," she whispered without looking up. "I didn't know if I would ever have the courage to show you. I didn't know if you would ever see me." Noah reached for the letter with hands he could not make still. "Please," he said, the word new in his mouth. "Please read it." Ruth nodded and unfolded the paper. She drew a breath that trembled on the way out. "Noah," she began, reading Lily's name for him like a candle in the dark. "If this finds you, it means I could not stay. I need you to do one last thing for me. Find the girl with the brave eyes who reminds me of the way you looked at the world when we were young. Help her build the house we dreamed about, the house with open doors. She will teach you how to see again." Noah pressed a fist against his mouth. His eyes burned. On the page, Lily's words walked forward. Gentle, stubborn, impossible to ignore. "And Noah," Ruth continued, voice shaking now, "when you feel alone, go where people are learning to hope again. Sit in the back and listen. I promise you will find me there." The letter slipped in her grip. A tear hit the paper and spread like a small star. She covered it with her palm as if to keep Lily's ink from running away. The side door banged. The church polo man rushed in, breath short, eyes wide. "Ruth," he said, "I'm sorry. The landlord just called. He won't wait for morning. He wants the rest of the rent tonight or he gives the hall to someone else." His words fell like stones in water. Ruth's face stayed calm, but her hands tightened around the letter. "How much?" she asked. He named the number from the whiteboard, then added a smaller one, and his late fee. The room felt smaller. The paper chain trembled in a tiny draft. The little girl with the pink ribbon peeked back in as if she could sense the air change. Ruth looked down at Lily's handwriting, then up at the door where the night waited. She swallowed, squared her shoulders, and did what she always did. She stepped toward the problem. "We'll find it," she said softly, almost to herself. "Even if I have to sell everything I own." She reached for her tote, pulled out a small wallet and dumped coins into her palm. It wasn't enough. She knew it. She didn't flinch. She slid Lily's letter back into the folder and tucked it against her heart like armor. Then she lifted her chin and turned, only to stop dead. Noah had stepped fully into the light. For a long second no one spoke. The church man blinked, recognized the face from billboards, and almost dropped his phone. Ruth's eyes widened, not in fear but in surprise that tasted like hope and worry mixed. Noah stood there in his perfect suit, hair sharp, shoes too clean for the floor, looking less like a king and more like a man who had just found his lost house. He opened his mouth, but the words piled up and jammed. He wanted to say, "I'm sorry." He wanted to say, "Thank you for loving her." He wanted to say, "I will keep the rent paid as long as I breathe." But pride and grief are old walls, and sometimes you have to push them one brick at a time. He reached into his coat for his wallet, then froze. A thought hit him like cold water. Lily had asked him to sit and listen, to find her in rooms like this, to learn how to see again. Had he rushed in with money before and ruined something gentle? Had he made help feel like a rescue instead of a partnership? His hand hovered. He looked at Ruth. She looked at the photo of Lily. The air buzzed with a choice. Outside, the wind picked up and rattled the loose glass. The paper chain shook and settled. The church man cleared his throat. "Sir," he said carefully, "we're about to lose this place. We can't." His voice cracked. He swallowed. "We can't lose the one door people know will open." Noah took a breath that reached the bottom of him for the first time in years. He stepped closer to the corkboard, to the child in the photo, to the woman who carried his wife's light without bragging, to the letter that still smelled like rain. He tapped the folder with one finger, his voice low. "What else?" he asked Ruth. "Did she write?" Ruth held the paper tighter, eyes glistening. "There's one more line," she said. "But, Mr. Carter, it's for your ears only." She glanced at the church man, then at the thin door where the night waited like a test. "If you want to hear it, you have to promise me something first." "What?" Noah asked, the word barely sound. Ruth lifted her chin a little, and in that small, brave motion he saw the orphan girl Lily had once sheltered and the teacher who would not bow to fear. "Promise you won't save us tonight with a check and disappear," she said gently. "Promise you will walk with us tomorrow. Sit with us. Learn with us. Let your heart come back home, slow and real." The clock in the hall clicked once, loud as a clap. Noah's mouth went dry. His driver's headlights cut a long triangle across the floor, then switched off, leaving only the soft church bulbs and the night's steady breath. He looked from Ruth to Lily's smile on the board and back again. The old wall inside him wobbled. One brick slid. "Read it to me," he whispered, not trusting the weight in his chest. "Please, Ruth." She touched the letter, closed her eyes for a heartbeat, then opened them and began to speak Lily's last private line. The line Noah had not heard since the hospital room went quiet 7 years ago. Only the first word came out before the door swung open again and a hard voice cut through the room. "Time's up," the landlord barked from the threshold, keys jangling. "Pay it now or pack it up. I want this hall empty before midnight." The landlord's voice cut through the room like cold wind, and every small sound, spoons in a plastic tub, paper chain rustling, the click of the wall clock, suddenly felt too loud. He stood in the doorway with one hand on the frame, keys flashing like a warning. Noah didn't blink. He stepped forward until his shadow reached the landlord's shoes. "How much?" Noah asked, the words steady but lined with steel. "And who told you could break your word at night?" The landlord squinted, half irritated, half surprised by the man in a perfect suit and quiet fury. "I told the lady here the deadline was tomorrow morning," he said, chin jutting out, "but my other tenant just raised their offer. They want the hall for a party venue. Cash tonight means I lock it for you. No cash means I change the lock now." He jerked his head at the thin door as if the room belonged to him already. Behind Noah, Ruth's fingers closed on the old folder until the paper whispered against her palm. The church man, Mr. Lewis, looked from Ruth to Noah and then to the landlord like a referee in a game he didn't want to play. Around the corner, the little girl with the pink ribbon, Joy, peeked in and then disappeared again, sensing the weight in the air. Noah didn't raise his voice. "You will not talk to her like that," he said gently, as if stating a fact. He took one card from his wallet and set it on the table, fingers resting on it. "Put the number on a piece of paper. The full number. Rent plus your late fee. Write your name. And remember this, if you move the goalpost again, I move you out of the field." The landlord laughed without humor. "Sir, with due respect, I don't know who you think you are." Mr. Lewis swallowed. "He's Noah Carter," he said softly, almost apologetically, like that name itself could calm the night. The landlord's eyes flicked to Noah's face, then the card, then his shoes. Something shifted, but not enough. Pride met pride in a narrow doorway. "Names don't change locks," the landlord said, and pulled a folded paper from his pocket. "This does." He waved what looked like a new lease application with bold letters. "Hold for Hayes Events." Ruth took one small step, not to fight but to stand near the center of the room she kept like a heartbeat. "Sir," she said to the landlord, voice even, "people learn to read in this hall. They eat in this hall. That sign out there, House of Second Chances, doesn't belong to me. It belongs to everyone who walks through that door. Give us the night you promised." The landlord glanced at her, then back at Noah, and smirked like a man who enjoys tiny wins. "Promises don't pay bills," he said, shrugging. "Money does." He tapped the paper. "This other party pays more. Double. With a bonus for me if I hand it over by midnight." The word midnight landed on Noah like a clock starting in his bones. He looked at the wall clock, 10:41. The room seemed to shrink. His instinct, old, strong, was to fix it with money quickly, cleanly, and leave. But Lily's words, living in that letter against Ruth's heart, tugged him like a hand at his sleeve. "Don't vanish with a check," she had asked through Ruth. "Walk with them. Sit with them. Learn with them. Let your heart come home slow and real." Noah nodded once to himself. "All right," he said to the landlord. "You want cash? Then stand there and listen." He pulled his phone, dialed his finance director, and spoke in a voice that brooked no delay. "Evan, it's me. I need a wire cleared in the next 15 minutes to the following account." He paused. "Yes, now. Call compliance. I'll sign whatever. We're doing a same-day transfer under emergency operations. If a red flag hits, pull my contingency card ending in 9024. I'll take the risk." He ended the call and looked up. "Write down your account," he said to the landlord, "or take a cashier's check. Your choice." The landlord tapped his keys against his palm, trying to mask a flicker of uncertainty. "Banks don't clear wires that fast at night," he muttered. "You're bluffing." Noah didn't smile. "Some doors," he said softly, "open when you knock with the right urgency." He looked to Ruth. "May I see the last line?" he asked, voice lowering as his eyes went to the folder. Ruth held the letter against her chest for a beat longer, then slipped the paper free, hands careful, as if lifting a sleeping bird. She stepped closer until they shared the same slim circle of light from a tired bulb. Her eyes were bright but steady. "I want you to hear it now," she whispered, "because if this night asks for more than money, these words will be your feet." She unfolded the last crease and read, and Noah felt the room lean in to listen even if they couldn't hear the exact words. "Noah," Ruth read, her voice trembling where Lily's handwriting grew lighter, "if your power tries to run ahead of your heart, let your heart set the pace. If you cannot fix it tonight, hold the door with your body until morning. Love is sometimes just refusing to move." Noah closed his eyes for a second. The meaning slid into the empty places and lit them. He opened his eyes and found Ruth watching him with a quiet hope she didn't show on her face. "Thank you," he said, and the word "thank" in his mouth felt like a door opening. He turned slowly to the landlord. "We will pay," he said, "and if the wire hits at 11:05 or 11:15 or 11:45, we will still be here. If you try to change the lock before it lands, you will have to move me first." He stepped into the threshold and rested his palm on the frame, not challenging, simply present. The landlord stared, weighing new things: money he half believed in, a man he didn't want to fight, and a room full of people who were not begging him but refusing to disappear. Mr. Lewis, hands shaking, searched in the drawer and found a church receipt book. "We can write an agreement," he said, looking from one man to the other. "A binding note until the bank confirms." The landlord raised an eyebrow. "A receipt from a church?" he sneered. "That's not—" He stopped when Noah pulled a slim leather folio from his inner pocket and laid it on the table. Inside was a printed sheet he carried for certain deals. A one-page memorandum of understanding with blank lines and a space for signatures, enforceable under local law for interim arrangements. "Use this," Noah said. "Fill the numbers. Fill the terms. We'll both sign. Mr. Lewis can witness." The landlord's eyes flicked again to the card on the table, to the folio, to the name he now believed belonged to the man in front of him. He grabbed a pen. "Fine," he grunted. "Write it." While Mr. Lewis wrote the figures, rent, late fee, and a small deposit, Ruth moved through the room with a calm born of long nights. She added water to the pot so it wouldn't scald, stacked the bowls so no one would hear them rattle, and slipped a fresh inhaler into Mason's pocket just in case the stress pulled his chest tight again. Joy reappeared at the door, hair ribbon tilted, clutching her baby brother. "Miss Ruth," she whispered, "is the door closing?" Ruth crouched and brought her to the middle of the room. "No," she said softly. "Not while we're standing." She allowed herself the smallest smile and tapped Joy's nose. "You and I, we're heavy when we stand together." Joy giggled without sound and squeezed Ruth's hand like a secret promise. The wall clock ticked toward 11 as the paper slid under the landlord's pen. He signed. Noah signed. Mr. Lewis signed and pressed the cheap carbon paper until his fingers went gray. When they were done, Noah reached for the folio, and his phone buzzed in his hand like a trapped bee. He glanced down. A red banner from the bank, flagged, "Urgent transfer, call TO approve." He hit call so fast the screen smudged. "Approve," he said. Password phrase, "Early rain." Increased threshold by 2 tiers under personal guarantee. Put it through. Compliance read him a disclosure at the speed of an auctioneer. He agreed. The call ended. The phone buzzed again, softer this time. Processing. 23 minutes, 23 minutes, Noah said, eyes on the landlord. "You can time it. I'll wait here with you." The landlord crossed his arms. "I'm not waiting in a church hall with strangers," he said. "You call me when it hits." Noah stepped back to the doorway and leaned his shoulder against it, not blocking exit or entry, only filling space. "Then don't lock the door," he answered, voice still gentle. "And don't come back with a locksmith. Because if you do, you'll find me here with a pen and a camera and a lawyer on speaker." The landlord held Noah's gaze for a long breath, then shoved his keys back in his pocket. "You have until midnight," he snapped. "If it's not there, I'm done." He turned and left, footsteps loud in the lane. The door swung and settled, and the room collectively exhaled like a person who had been holding air underwater. Ruth didn't run to Noah with thanks. She didn't need to. He felt her gratitude move through the space like warm air from an opening oven. Present, steady, nourishing. He turned to her. "I am sorry for following you," he said simply, not defending, not explaining. "I am sorry for not seeing you. And I am thankful, more than I can say, that you let me stand here now." Ruth's eyes softened, but she didn't let him off the hook with easy kindness. "Seeing is not the same as staying," she said quietly. "This place isn't a one-night story to feel good about. It's day after day. It's names. It's remembering who takes sugar and who doesn't. It's how you show up when the picture isn't neat." Noah nodded. "Then teach me," he said. "I'm not good at slow. I want to be." They used the waiting minutes like farmers use dawn. Noah called his hotel operations lead on a private line and spoke with a speed that made the man on the other end breathe faster. "We're changing our food protocol," Noah said. "Effective tomorrow, all safe surplus from the kitchens will be sealed and sent to approved centers by schedule. Not, if convenient, not, when remembered. I want a list of every center within an hour of our largest properties by 9 a.m. and a compliance check by noon. You'll get a new storage unit and a driver assigned for nightly runs. And listen," he added, voice deepening, "we will coordinate with whoever Ruth tells us to coordinate with. She leads here, not us." He hung up before the man could promise more than he could keep. Ruth watched without interrupting, then pressed a hand to the folder again as if to say, she would be proud, but didn't say it out loud. Instead, she walked to a small box under the corkboard and pulled out a bundle wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. "Lily asked me to give you this when I felt the time was right," she said, cheeks coloring as if she worried she had misread the hour. "I didn't think I would ever be brave enough. I think tonight is the night." She held the bundle like a small cake. Noah felt his chest ache at the shape of it, the exact way Lily used to wrap books for surprise gifts, then carefully set it on the table and slid the string free. Inside lay 3 things: a worn journal with a coffee stain that looked like a crescent moon, a small brass key on a thin ribbon, and a photo in a frame made from popsicle sticks painted a sloppy blue. Noah touched the journal first. It opened to a page halfway through, Lily's handwriting running left to right like a river that knew its banks. "House with open doors," she had written at the top, underlined, dated 8 years ago. "Start with 1 hall. Add a library corner. Add job board. Add showers. Add a small play area. Add 2 teachers. Add a nurse 2 nights a week. Add volunteers. Add music. Add warmth. Remove shame." She had drawn a little box next to each line and checked some. "We did the library," Ruth said softly, pointing to a corner with a crate of books and a rug patterned with stars. "The job board is a cork strip by the sink. No showers yet. No nurse. But we remove shame every night we remember to smile." Her smile flickered, quick and honest. Noah's thumb brushed the brass key. On its tag in Lily's small neat letters were the words, "Backroom Clinic. For when your heart wants to help but your head says later. Don't wait." He didn't know he could cry without sound that way. The tears came anyway, not wild, not ugly, just true, sliding down a face that spent years holding. He set the key on the journal and picked up the photo. Lily stood in the rain, hair stuck to her forehead, laughing. Beside her, Ruth, younger, skinnier, under the world's smallest umbrella. On the popsicle frame in uneven blue paint, a single word, "Still." Noah traced it, then set the frame back like a fragile thing that will break if you breathe on it too hard. The phone buzzed again. "Processing complete. Pending receipt confirmation." It took 8 minutes. The clock read 11:20. The room warmed with possibility. People who had lingered outside drifted in, drawn by some quiet magnetism. An old man with careful steps, a teenager with a shy smile, a mother with a baby who finally slept. Mr. Lewis announced, voice shaking with relief and warning, "Let's wait together." It sounded like a prayer that didn't need the word "Amen" to land. In the waiting, small miracles showed. Mason, chest clear now, helped Joy fold the plastic table covers into near-perfect squares because Ruth once showed him how to make his hands slow and precise. The grandmother who struggled with believe earlier took a pen and practiced the word on a napkin, letters growing bolder with each try. Noah watched the tiny acts, folding, writing, washing, smiling, and felt something click back into place in him like a door on its hinge. Then the outer door creaked. Everyone looked up, expecting the landlord with a locksmith or the bank with a message. Instead, a thin man in a blazer that tried too hard walked in with two people behind him and a clip-on badge that read City Inspections, Night Desk. He did not smile. "We received a complaint," he announced, scanning the room like a scanner beam. "Noise. Food distribution without permit. Building use after posted hours." He pointed to the sign on the wall, hours, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m., with a pen as if he had found a smoking gun. The air shifted harder than when the landlord had entered. This was different. This was not about money. This was about rules that could be twisted into knives. Ruth stepped forward, chin level. "We are within our rights," she said gently. "This is a private event with members. Food is donated and labeled. We are under the church's license." The inspector didn't even glance at her. "Who's in charge?" he asked, eyes already sliding to Noah because suits draw attention like magnets draw pins. Noah did not flinch. "She is," he said, tipping his head toward Ruth, then took a breath that carried the steady of a man who negotiates towers. "But since you like badges, I can tell you who I am. I'm the property representative tonight for financial settlement on this hall. And I'm a donor. My name is Noah Carter." The inspector's pen paused midair, the way a bird pauses when it sees a glass window for the first time. Recognition flitted over his face. It did not soften him as much as it might have softened others. He snapped the pen closed. "Donor or not," he said, "you're out of compliance. I have authority to post a temporary closure pending review. That means you vacate now." Mr. Lewis swallowed and stepped forward, brave in a shy way. "Sir, please," he murmured. "If we shut the doors, where do they go tonight?" He nodded at the baby, at the old man, at the teenager with brand new confidence sitting on a folding chair like it was a throne. The inspector looked past them, uncomfortable with the faces that make rules feel silly. "Not my problem," he said. "Out is out." Noah did not raise his voice. He put the brass key in his pocket like a promise and stood back in the threshold, exactly where Lily's line told him to stand. "Post your paper," he said, "and then call your supervisor. Tell them you're about to close a literacy class and hot meal in a church hall over an after-hours technicality the landlord himself is forcing by changing terms at night. Tell them you're doing it while a wire is clearing to keep the hall open. Spell my last name clearly when you call. And say this on speaker so we all hear it." He pulled his phone and dialed his legal counsel. "Put on the call," he told the inspector, holding his phone at arm's length. "We'll stay lawful. But we won't go quietly because your paperwork wants to be louder than human need." The inspector sighed the sigh of a man who had come expecting to stamp and leave and instead found himself in a story. He dialed. A voice, sleepy but careful, answered. "Night desk." The inspector explained, stumbling a little over Carter, aware now of the weight of syllables. The supervisor listened. When she spoke, her voice was crisp. "If they are a private group, not open to public entry, and if food is labeled and not sold, and if there is no amplified sound, and if the property owner has not filed a formal complaint, then you do not have grounds for closure tonight. You may issue a warning and set a morning check. Confirm and withdraw." The inspector stared at his shoes. "Confirmed?" he muttered. He closed his phone like a boy putting away a toy. "Warning," he said to the room, embarrassed now. "Morning check." He handed Mr. Lewis a yellow copy that looked like a school slip and left without meeting Ruth's eyes. The door swung again and the room laughed, not loud, not mocking, just relieved. Ruth's shoulders lowered a half-inch. Noah felt sweat cool on his back he hadn't noticed start. The phone buzzed. "Funds received. Clear." The text glowed on the screen like a small sunrise. Mr. Lewis made a sound that was not a word and not a cry but something in between. He clapped once, loudly, and then pressed a palm to his mouth like he had sworn not to shout in church. "It's done," Noah said, letting the words fall into the room and settle. "The rent is paid. The door stays." Ruth didn't reach for his hand. She reached for a broom because that's how she knew she was still here and the work was still real. She swept the last few crumbs under the dustpan and looked up at Noah with a different depth in her eyes, like she had seen both his pocket and his spine and approved of both. "Thank you for not leaving," she said. "Tonight, that is worth more than the transfer." He smiled a small smile he had not used in years. "I'm not leaving," he said. Then, because the room was full of people who needed not just money but moments, he did something he had never done in a room like this. He pulled a chair, sat in the back, and listened while Ruth led everyone in reading one more sentence from the board. "We believe we can learn." He read it too quietly, like it was new. When the last bowl was washed and the last book put in its crate, Mr. Lewis locked the supply cabinet with gentle care. The grandmother tucked her napkin, covered in the word "believe," into her pocket like a precious receipt. Mason pulled his hoodie up against the night air and grinned at Ruth before slipping out. Joy kissed her sleeping baby brother's forehead and whispered, "See? We're still inside." Ruth stood at the door and touched each shoulder as they passed, saying names, not titles. "Good night, Alma." "Good night, Jay." "Good night, Mr. Thomas." It was a roll call of dignity. Only Noah and Ruth and Mr. Lewis remained when the clock blinked 11:57. The lane outside was almost empty, the kind of quiet that holds its breath. The landlord appeared again at exactly 11:59, as if he wanted to be able to say he tried. He walked in, trying to act like he hadn't felt his phone buzz with the bank's confirmation. "Well?" he asked, looking straight at Noah. Noah simply slid the signed memorandum and a printed bank confirmation across the table. The landlord's eyes flicked. He swallowed. He nodded without looking at anyone. "Fine," he said. "You bought your time. The month is yours. We will talk about next month next week." He turned to leave, then paused, hand on the frame. "Off the record," he said, still not looking, "this neighborhood is changing. The people with money want space. They don't like this." His hand flapped at the tables, the books, the chain. "You'll be fighting wind." Noah stood. "Then we'll learn to lean," he said calmly. "Wind is good if you know where to put the sail." The landlord snorted and left. His footsteps faded like a thought someone forgot to finish. For a small forever, the room was just the three of them and the hum of the old refrigerator. Mr. Lewis put both hands on the table to steady himself. "I'm going to cry later," he announced to no one in particular, "so I don't do it now and flood the hall." Ruth laughed, tired and warm. Noah's laugh surprised him. How clean it felt, like a window opened in a room he'd kept shut too long. They stepped into the lane. The air smelled like wet stone and leaves. Ruth locked the side door with the same key she had used for years, then slid the letter back into its folder and the folder into her tote. "Now what?" Noah asked, not as a man who commands, but as a man willing to be told. Ruth adjusted the strap on her shoulder. "Now we go home," she said. "And tomorrow we make a list. Real things, not big speeches. Shelves that wobble. Kids who need shoes. A nurse we can convince to volunteer once a week. We write it down so it becomes work instead of wishes." She looked at him, searching for the old impatience. It wasn't there. He nodded. "I'm good with lists," he said. "I've been making the wrong kind." They walked toward the street together, the quiet hum of the city settling around them. Noah's driver pulled the car forward. He opened the back door and then closed it again. "Would you like a ride?" he asked Ruth. She shook her head. "I take the bus," she said. "It helps me remember the world I serve." She hesitated, then added, "But you can walk with me to the stop if you want to start your lesson now." The invitation was a test disguised as kindness. Noah smiled and put his hands in his pockets like a boy at summer school. "I do," he said. They crossed the street. The bus stop light threw a pale circle on the sidewalk. A poster flapped on the pole. Somewhere far off, a dog barked at nothing. They stood, not talking at first because quiet can be a teacher when your life has been too loud. Ruth finally spoke, voice low. "You thought I was stealing when I took bread," she said, not cruel, just precise. "Now you know where it went." Noah didn't defend. "I'm learning the cost of not asking," he said. "It's higher than the price of bread." Ruth nodded, satisfied with the shape of that sentence. "Good," she said. "Keep that." The bus headlights curved into view. Ruth stepped closer to the curb. "There's something else," she added, fingers brushing the folder again. "Lily wrote one last instruction in the back of the journal. I didn't show you inside because I thought it would scare you away if you weren't ready." Noah's mouth went dry. "What did she write?" he asked. Ruth's eyes glinted with the kind of daring that makes small people do big things. She wrote, "When he shows up, hand him the key and say this: the back room at the clinic isn't a room. It's a blueprint. He will know what to do." The bus's brakes sighed. The doors folded open. Ruth looked at Noah, waiting. "Do you know what to do?" she asked. His heart hit the inside of his chest twice, hard like a hand on a door. He thought of Lily's clinic, the back room he had avoided because grief made it a museum in his mind. He thought of the journal list, showers, nurse, job board, and how a blueprint isn't just a sketch, it's a command to build. He nodded. "I think I do," he said, and for the first time since Lily's funeral, the word do felt like hope instead of pressure. Ruth stepped onto the bus platform, then turned back for half a second, her hand on the pole. "Tomorrow," she said, "we start earlier. The kids come by 7. Some don't eat breakfast at home." She paused. "And Noah? Don't send your assistant. Come yourself." He didn't blink. "I will," he said. She smiled, very small, like a person pleased with a test's first answer, and then the doors closed between them. The bus pulled away, lights dwindling, her figure a moving shape through glass until the curve swallowed it. Noah stood on the empty sidewalk, the city cooler now, the lane darker. He reached into his pocket and touched the brass key again, the ribbon warm from his skin. He looked up and saw a sky he'd ignored for years. It looked the same and new. He breathed in, breathed out, and turned toward the waiting car, not to hide but to go home and write the list Ruth had promised to help him make. He touched his phone, swiped open his notes app and typed, "Back room. Blueprint. Start." He was halfway to the car when a dark SUV rolled too fast around the corner and stopped where the lane met the street. The window slid down. The landlord's face didn't appear. Another man's did, slick hair, easy smile, eyes that moved like they were used to watching people bend. "Mr. Carter," the man called, the voice friendly the way ice can look like water. "I represent Hayes Events. We bought an option from your friend. Word is you interfered with our agreement." He gestured loosely at the hall door with 2 fingers like pointing a gun you pretend is a joke. "We don't like losing rooms. We especially don't like losing them to people who don't know how business works down here." Noah stopped with his hand on the car door. "The hall is paid," he said. "And your option expired at midnight." The man's smile didn't twitch. "See," he said, "we count midnight different. We count it when we say it is." He nodded once, small. "Be careful where you stand, Mr. Carter. Some doors close on fingers." The SUV rolled away, not fast, not loud, like a threat that wears slippers. Noah stared after it, jaw tight, mind already flipping pages it didn't know it had. He thought of Ruth and the kids and the paper chain that read, "We can start again." He thought of Lily's last line about holding the door with your body. He thought of how some fights are loud and some are legal and some are just showing up day after day until the bully gets bored. He looked at the clinic key again. If the hall drew heat now, the blueprint needed a second location ready by morning. The back room wasn't a room, it was Plan B. Plan B needed workers, permits, a plumber, a painter, a nurse, and casseroles. He opened the car door, and his phone vibrated hard enough to buzz through his hand. A new alert pulsed across the screen from a news blog that loved hotel gossip. Carter Air seen at illegal night feed in Church Hall. Board sources say distraction as new tower faces delay. A second buzz, a text from his board chair with a single line that pretended to be polite and wasn't. "Call me." "No." His driver looked at him in the rearview mirror, face worried. Noah didn't get in. He stared at the screen and imagined the boardroom tomorrow morning, men and women with manicured hands and urgent voices. He imagined them telling him to step back from charity optics and focus on shareholder value. He imagined them calling Ruth small, calling the hall a risk, calling the blueprint a waste. He slid the phone into his pocket and closed the car door again without getting in. He turned back to the hall, to the church sign, to the lane that knew his footprint now. He stood in the middle of the road where the bus's shadow had just been and breathed. The SUV's taillights had vanished. The threat had not. The board would call at dawn. The man from Hayes would not forget the word interfered. The landlord would watch his account with fresh hunger. And Ruth would be there at 7 with kids who needed eggs and pencils. Noah lifted the key to eye level, the brass catching the last light from a sleepy street lamp like a quiet star. He took one step toward the clinic, toward the blueprint, toward the room that wasn't a room, toward the thing that would turn tonight into a tomorrow no rumor could take apart. When a second SUV, darker than the first, slid to a stop at the curb. The window lowered. A voice he had not heard in years, calm, low, familiar as a song he used to play on loop, spoke his name through the dark. "Noah." He froze. His mind said impossible. His heart said listen. The face leaned into the circle of streetlight, and every single plan in his head blew like paper at an open door. The air felt like it had stopped moving. Noah stood frozen on the curb, the brass key clutched in his hand, the SUV's headlights painting long shadows across the cracked pavement. That voice, soft, steady, familiar in a way that twisted something deep inside him, had called his name from the darkness, and for one dizzy second, he thought he was dreaming. Then the figure leaned forward into the light. It wasn't Lily. It couldn't be. She was gone. But the woman who stepped out of the car made his heart stumble just the same. Her name was Elena Brooks, Lily's younger sister. She was the one who'd vanished after the funeral, the one who had refused his calls and disappeared overseas without a word. Her hair was shorter now, her frame thinner, her eyes sharper, but the same streak of stubborn grace that Lily had lived with burned in her face. She shut the SUV door softly, heels crunching the gravel, her voice carrying that same calm that always meant a storm was coming. "You shouldn't be here at this hour," she said, stopping a few feet from him. "You're making powerful men nervous." Noah's breath came out in a shaky laugh. "You sound just like your sister," he said quietly. "Always showing up when the roof's on fire." Elena's gaze flicked to the church hall door. "Then it's true. You reopened the house." "Not reopened," he said, correcting her gently. Ruth kept it alive. "I just found the door again." For a moment neither spoke. The hum of the idling SUV filled the silence like background noise in a dream. Then Elena took a step closer, her tone lowering. "You've made enemies tonight, Noah? That landlord? He's connected. The Hayes Events people are not just a company, they're a front for something dirtier. You stepped into their line, and they won't just send warning words next time." Noah looked past her to the dark shape of the hall, its small window glowing faintly gold. "Let them come," he said, his voice flat. "I've spent years fighting boardrooms full of cowards. I can handle street threats." Elena shook her head. "No, you don't understand. These people don't fight in boardrooms. They fight in silence. They buy inspectors, burn leases, and blame the fire on a candle. If you want to protect this place, you can't just throw money. You'll need cover, real cover. And people who know the streets better than you." Noah studied her, realization dawning. "You've been watching this, haven't you? All this time abroad?" Elena looked away. "Not watching," she said. "Helping. Quietly. Lily's projects didn't die with her, Noah. They just went underground." She paused, her eyes glistening faintly. "When you disappeared into your hotels and I left for the aid program, the spaces she built, the shelters, the reading rooms, started closing one by one. The funding dried up. But some of us, we kept them breathing." She reached into her coat and pulled out a thin folder. "The House of Second Chances is one of the few still standing. Until tonight." Noah took the folder and flipped it open. Inside were photos, blurry snapshots of rooms like the one he just left. One in Ibadan, another in Abuja, another in Enugu. All small, all fragile, all running on scraps and volunteer hearts. He stared at the faces, children reading on tiled floors, mothers stirring pots, men fixing chairs with twine, and realized what Lily's blueprint had really been. Not one house. Many. A chain of small, beating hearts hidden across the country. "You kept this going," he murmured. "We tried," Elena said simply. "But without someone with real influence, they'll all fall one by one." Noah looked at her, the decision already taking root inside him. "Then we don't let them fall." Elena frowned. "You can't fix decades of broken systems overnight." "I don't need overnight," he said. "I need tomorrow morning." He turned toward his car, then stopped, remembering Ruth's words. "Don't send your assistant. Come yourself." His chest tightened. "Ruth doesn't know you're here," he said quietly. "Does she?" Elena shook her head. "No, but she knows me. She just doesn't know I'm back." "Then let's not scare her tonight," he said. "She's been through enough. Tomorrow, after the kids come in, we'll talk to her together." Elena studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, but be ready. Hayes won't wait for your morning." She turned and walked back to her car, the SUV pulling away without a sound. Noah stood there long after the taillights disappeared, staring at the folder in his hands. For the first time in years he didn't feel lost. He felt called. Morning came with soft harmattan light creeping through his bedroom curtains. Noah hadn't slept. The folder lay open beside his coffee, and the brass key glowed faintly in the morning sun. His phone was full of messages from his board, each more urgent than the last. "We need to address last night's incident. Damage control immediately. The press is spinning charity interference. Call me now." He ignored them all. Instead, he pulled on a plain shirt, no suit, no tie, and drove himself to the clinic. The back room was smaller than he remembered. The air smelled faintly of dust and disinfectant. A faded poster of the human skeleton hung crooked on the wall. At first glance, it was just a storage space filled with boxes of medical supplies, an old cot, and a filing cabinet. But when he tried the key on the far cabinet door, the lock clicked open, and inside was a hidden compartment. a notebook, a map, and a USB stick wrapped in brown paper. He sat on the cot and opened the notebook. The first page was titled Blueprint Expansion, Lily Carter and Team. His throat tightened at the sight of her name written in her careful script. Beneath it were lists, names, addresses, tasks, and a note in blue pen. If anything happens to me, this continues. Each center becomes self-led. But if Noah ever finds this, tell him, the root is here. Protect the teachers. He stared at that line for a long time, the meaning settling like a weight. Lily had built not a charity but a network, one designed to survive without her. The teachers she mentioned, Ruth, Elena, others, were the foundation. They weren't employees. They were seeds. And he realized suddenly that if Hayes wanted to take down the house, they wouldn't just attack the building. They would target the people, the teachers. He reached for the USB and plugged it into his laptop. A video opened automatically. Lily's face filled the screen, recorded years ago. Her smile was tired but radiant. "Hi, love," she said, her voice soft and steady. "If you're watching this, I guess I didn't make it. But don't close the door. I know you. You'll want to fix things big and fast. But the world doesn't change with grand gestures. It changes with small faith repeated daily. Find Ruth. Find Elena. Trust them. And please, when it gets hard, don't forget to breathe. Love isn't lost when I'm gone. It's waiting in the rooms you'll rebuild." The video ended, leaving silence thick enough to choke on. Noah bowed his head, pressing the laptop closed. For the first time in years he prayed, not with words but with tears. By 7 he was standing outside the hall again. Ruth was already there, unlocking the door, wearing the same gray sweater and quiet strength. When she saw him, surprise flickered across her face, followed by a tiny, approving smile. "You came," she said simply. "I told you I would," he replied. "Good," she said. "The kids are early today. Maybe because they heard what happened last night." She looked up at him. "I told them the house was still open because a man remembered how to see." Her words hit deeper than she knew. He helped her set up tables, pour porridge, and distribute notebooks. It was clumsy at first, his hands too slow, his instincts too clean, but Ruth never laughed. She corrected him quietly, guiding him with patience that felt like sunlight breaking through fog. When the children arrived, the room came alive again. Tiny hands, big voices, shy giggles, the sound of pencils scratching on old paper. For a while, Noah forgot everything else. He was just there. Then Elena walked in. Ruth froze mid-step, the cup in her hand shaking. "Elena?" Elena smiled gently. "It's been a long time." Ruth's eyes filled. "I thought you left for good." "I almost did," Elena said, crossing the room. "But your message reached me. I came back because you kept her dream alive." The two women embraced, teacher and sister, both bound by the same promise to Lily. Noah watched silently, the sight of them together making something in his heart unclench. When they pulled apart, Ruth looked between them, her brow furrowing. "You knew she was here?" "I found out last night," Noah said honestly. "She warned me about Hayes. She also showed me something, Lily's blueprint. The network of houses." He pulled the folder from his bag and placed it on the table. "There are others, Ruth. Dozens. Some running out of supplies. Some already gone. We can rebuild them. But we need to be smart." Ruth traced the photos with trembling fingers. "I thought we were the last one," she whispered. "You're the last one still visible," Elena said. "The others went underground. Hidden in clinics, churches, even barber shops. But Hayes is closing in. They want the land, the buildings, anything that helps them clean their money. So we fight back," Ruth said quietly. Noah nodded. "We fight, but not with noise. With structure. We'll form a trust. Register each house under a single protected foundation, the Lily Carter Initiative. I'll fund it, but you'll run it. Full autonomy. Transparent, audited, untouchable." Elena raised an eyebrow. "You think they won't come after your name?" "They can try," Noah said, eyes hard. "But I've spent my life building walls. Maybe it's time I use them to shelter people instead of profit." Ruth looked at him, hope and fear dancing in her eyes. "That's a lot to promise." "I don't promise lightly anymore," he said. Outside, a commotion rose, a car screeching to a stop, voices shouting. Mason ran in, face pale. "Miss Ruth, there are men outside. They're taking pictures. They said they're from the press, but they look wrong." Elena's expression tightened. "Hayes." Noah's jaw set. "Stay inside." He strode out the door. Two men stood across the street, holding cameras aimed at the hall. Another leaned against a black van, smirking. "Mr. Carter," one called out, "heard you're running soup kitchens now. That for tax breaks or guilt?" The other laughed. Noah didn't answer. He walked right up to them. "Leave," he said calmly. "Can't," the smirker replied. "Public street. And the boss wants shots of the new Messiah." Noah stepped closer until their lenses caught his reflection instead of Ruth's building. "Take one more photo," he said softly, "and I'll make sure every paper you ever touch prints your real name, Adekunle Fashola. 2 fraud charges dropped in 2019. Want me to remind your editor?" The man froze, color draining from his face. "How?" "Your boss," Noah said, "forgets I built half the city he's trying to poison." The men exchanged looks. Then they got in the van and drove off without another word. When Noah turned back, Ruth was standing at the doorway, her eyes wide. "How did you know who they were?" He smiled faintly. "When you spend your life chasing power, you learn the names of those who rent it." She shook her head, half amazed, half afraid. "You're playing a dangerous game." He looked at the brass key in his pocket. "Maybe for once I'm playing the right one." By afternoon, word had spread that the house had survived the night. Donations began to trickle in, an envelope of cash from the church choir, a bag of rice from a local trader, a stack of books from a retired teacher. Ruth wept quietly as she stacked them, whispering thanks. Noah helped without ceremony. For the first time, his wealth wasn't distance, it was a bridge. Elena watched him closely. "You've changed," she said. "The man I remember was colder." "The man you remember," he said softly, "was buried with your sister." She looked down, her throat tightening. "She believed in you till the end, you know." "I didn't deserve it then," he said. "But maybe I can now." Evening settled slow and gold. The children left, their laughter echoing down the lane. Ruth locked up the door and turned to Noah and Elena. "What now?" "Now," Noah said, "we open the blueprint." He unfolded the map from Lily's notebook, spreading it across the table. Small red dots marked every house location across Nigeria. Some circled, some crossed out. "These are the living ones. These," he pointed to the faint ones, "are ghosts. We start with 3 nearest to Lagos. Rebuild, secure funding, assign teachers. Each one protected by the trust." Ruth smiled faintly. "Lily used to say, hope moves in triangles. She'd like this." Elena's eyes softened. "She'd be proud of you both." Then the lights flickered. Once, twice. Then the power cut out completely. A low hum filled the silence, the kind that comes before trouble. Outside, engines growled. A dark van rolled to a stop. Noah's gut clenched. Ruth's voice was barely a whisper. They came back. The van doors opened. 3 men stepped out, no cameras this time. One held a folded paper. The leader, a heavy-set man with sharp eyes, called out, "Mr. Carter, we're just here to deliver a message." Elena moved toward the door, but Noah stopped her. "Let me handle it." He stepped out into the dim streetlight. The man smiled too wide. "The boss says you're making noise. He wants peace. So here's the deal. You sell us the lease for triple value. Walk away. No headlines. No accidents." Noah's stomach turned. "And if I don't?" The man shrugged. "Then accidents happen." Before Noah could reply, a small voice cut through the air. "Leave him alone." It was Joy, standing at the corner, clutching her brother's hand. She must have come back for her forgotten notebook. The man looked at her, sneering. "Go home, kid." Noah's blood boiled. He stepped between them, his voice calm but deadly. "Touch her and you'll disappear before sunrise." The man laughed, but not long. Because behind Noah, from the church gate, a dozen figures emerged. Locals. Volunteers. Men and women who had eaten at the house, learned to read there, slept under its roof. They stood shoulder to shoulder, silent but solid. One of them, the old grandmother from last night, held a broom like a staff. "You heard him," she said. "Leave." The men glanced at one another. The leader spat on the ground, muttered something in Yoruba, and signaled to the driver. The van rolled away into the dark. Ruth's knees nearly gave out. Noah caught her. "They won't stop," she whispered. "No," he said, steadying her. "But neither will we." He looked at the people standing in the street, his people now, and saw something bigger than fear in their faces. It was belief. The same belief Lily had written about. The same belief Ruth had taught through chalk and patience. And for the first time in years, Noah felt the weight of leadership not as a burden but as a calling. He turned to Ruth and Elena. "Tomorrow we meet the press. We tell our story before they twist it." Ruth frowned. "They'll spin it against you." "Then let them," he said. We'll stand anyway. As the crowd dispersed, Joy tugged his sleeve. Mr. Noah, she said shyly, will you be here tomorrow too? He smiled down at her, brushing dust from her ribbon. Every day, he promised, until we finish what she started. The night deepened around them, quiet again except for the soft buzz of street lamps flickering back to life. Ruth exhaled slowly, looking up at the sky. She's watching us, she whispered. I know, Noah said, his hand tightening on the brass key. And she's not done yet. Because somewhere across town, in a glass office lit by neon blue, a man in a dark suit watched them through a live feed, a smirk curling on his lips. He picked up his phone and made a single call. They think they've won, he said. Move the next piece. The game had just begun. The video started with Lily's smile and ended with a sentence that felt like a door flinging open. If your power tries to run ahead of your heart, let your heart set the pace. And that's where our story explodes this morning. If you're new here, lean in because something big is about to happen. Hit like if you believe second chances are real and drop your city in the comments so I can shout you out in the next part, because what you're about to hear will test your chest and water your eyes. Noah wore a plain white shirt to the boardroom, not his usual storm black suit. The room was glass on 3 sides, Legos spread below like a bright map. The directors were already seated, faces neutral in that expensive way. Sterling, the chair, folded his hands. You're trending for all the wrong reasons, he said. You stepped into a soup kitchen and into a gang's way. Investors hate confusion. Pull back. Hand this house to PR and a charity partner. Smile for photos. Then stop. Noah slid a slim folder onto the table. He did not sit. We're not giving photos, he said evenly. We're giving structure. I'm creating a protected trust, the Lily Carter Initiative, to secure literacy halls and family kitchens in the city and beyond. Food rescue from our hotel starts today. I'll fund the pilot privately. Operations can assist, but the community leads. We won't slap our logo on their dignity. A director with perfect nails sighed. This brand is hospitality, not activism. You're risking permits and supply contracts. Noah held her gaze. Hospitality without humanity is just clean napkins. Sterling's jaw ticked. I admire grief-driven passion, he said, each word polished until it cut. But shareholders don't pay for your memories. We need a vote. He raised his hand. All in favor that we instruct the CEO to cease this exposure? Hands rose, smooth and obedient. Noah's heart thudded, old reflex, but he let it land and pass. You can vote to manage a man, he said quietly, or you can stand with a neighbor. I'll respect any legal instruction about corporate assets. But you don't own my name, my weekends, or my wife's blueprint. On those, I don't need your yes. The room shifted. Sterling's smile cooled. Then we separate church and table, he said. You will not deploy hotel staff, vehicles, or storage under company policy unless cleared. We issue a statement. Mr. Carter's personal charity work is not affiliated with the company. If you breach, we review your contract. Noah nodded once. Done. And I'll use my personal fleet, my personal funds, and my personal time. Keep your statement short. I'll keep the halls open long. He left before anyone could turn his spine into a committee item. Downstairs, the city air felt like real air. Elena waited by the curb, phone at her ear, face focused. They'll try to starve us, she said when she hung up. Cut off suppliers. Scare small donors. Paint you as rich man saviors so the people get suspicious. Noah passed her a list. Then we go smaller and wider. We split routes. We store food in 3 places. We put the trust papers in 4 different hands. We digitize the roster. We insure the hall. If one door closes, we use another. If the van is blocked, we carry boxes. Elena's mouth twitched. You didn't change, she said. You just turned. He smiled without brightness. Lily did that. By afternoon, the house was humming. Ruth marked reading levels on sticky notes. Mr. Lewis sorted forms. Joy passed pencils like a tiny chief of staff. The stove hissed, a sweet smell rolling through the hall. Beans, pepper, a whisper of smoke. Mason cleaned chairs with serious pride. Then trouble came, quiet, wrapped like an envelope. The landlord appeared with a stranger in a navy blazer, thin tie, thin smile. Compliance audit, the stranger announced, flashing a badge too fast. We've had reports you're storing food improperly. Ruth didn't flinch. Everything is labeled, dated, sealed, she said. We log temperatures. The man's eyes slid to the back door. Show me storage. Ruth started forward, but Noah stepped in. Happy to, he said. But let's record it. He raised his phone, camera bright. The man's smile thinned more. They walked to the pantry. Shelves were lined, containers neat, dates in bold marker. Surplus from a hotel already stamped with safe to share per the new partner kitchen's guidelines. The man scanned, eager for a fault, and found only care. He clicked his tongue. "We'll be back," he said. Noah nodded. "Bring a real badge next time." They were halfway back to the hall when the miracle happened, so simple you could miss it. The old grandfather who battled the word believe posted his napkin to the corkboard and read the sentence to anyone who would listen. He didn't cry. He laughed. His laugh carried like bell metal, and in that moment the whole room stood a little taller. Ruth pressed her fist against her chest to keep from breaking into happy tears. "This is why," she whispered. "This is the whole why." Evening slid down the lane, soft and violet. That's when the blow landed from a direction no one expected. A woman in a navy skirt suit walked in holding a sealed envelope. "Court service," she said. Ruth took it, hand steady, eyes curious. Inside was a neat lie, an injunction draft claiming the house posed public disorder and sanitation risk, asking the court to allow a lockout pending review. It bore stamps that looked real and a hearing date that was too soon. Elena read it once and shook her head. "This is fast-tracked by a friend." Noah didn't raise his voice. "Who signed?" he asked. Elena pointed. "Acting registrar." Noah's jaw hardened. "He plays golf with Sterling." They didn't panic. They pivoted. Mr. Lewis called a pro bono clinic he knew. Elena texted her legal contact in Abuja. Ruth gathered the volunteers for calm instructions. "We do not shout," she said. "We clean twice. We label every pot. We smile. If anyone asks, we speak one truth. This hall feeds and teaches quietly." Joy tugged her sleeve. "Do we lose our door?" Ruth knelt. "Doors are more than wood," she said. "They are people. We stand together. We are the door." Joy nodded, brave in the way small children can be. Night brought cameras again, but this time they were ours. Neighbors recorded testimonies. A mother who learned to fill out a school form, a driver who passed an exam because Ruth drilled him on words, a teen who put down a blade and picked up a book. Noah gave a 2-minute statement under the paper chain, eyes clear. "We are not a party hall," he said. "We are a quiet table. We keep records, we follow rules, and we hold this door for anyone who wants to learn. If you have questions, ask us. If you have fear, come and see. If you have power, use it to lift, not crush." It wasn't slick. It was solid. The clip spread before midnight, not because Noah was famous, but because the faces around him weren't. Bakers offered bread. A clinic offered nurse hours. A teacher sent her Saturday. A small church in Surulere messaged, "We have a room. Use it if needed." The ground moved. Hayes felt it and pushed harder. At 6 a.m., 2 trucks blocked the lane. Men jumped out with toolkits and a heavy chain. "Emergency lock repair," one said. "By order." He flashed nothing. Noah stood in the frame, Ruth behind him, Mr. Lewis to his left, Elena to his right. Around them, neighbors formed a crescent, quiet and immovable. "We have a court date," Noah said. "You have a bluff. You cut this lock and you cut it on live video." Phones went up like a field of small suns. The men hesitated. The leader swore under his breath and stepped back. "We'll be back with papers," he muttered. "Bring real ones," Elena said. The court came that afternoon, swift as rain. A small courtroom smelled like old paper and faint disinfectant. The registrar who golfs with rich men sat too straight. Hayes's lawyer wore an easy smile and a watch that screamed. Ruth sat at the end of the bench, hands in her lap, the letter from Lily tucked under her sweater like protection. Our lawyer, a slim woman with eyes that missed nothing, stood and spoke clean. "My clients operate a literacy hall and meal service within a church facility under the church's license. They meet health guidelines, they possess logs, and they pose no danger. The applicant has not shown real harm, only discomfort at seeing poor people served. We submit 2 binders, procedures and affidavits from neighbors. We also submit photographic evidence of attempted intimidation." She lifted a page showing the fake badge. Then she did a thing that cracked the case open like cola. She called a witness, Elena, who calmly described the network Lily built, the backroom blueprint, the clear purpose. Elena's last line landed like truth tends to land, soft and heavy. "This hall doesn't make noise," she said. "It makes readers." The judge, an older man with kind eyes he tried to hide, looked over his glasses. "Counsel, I have no appetite for locking learning out of a church." He turned to Hayes's lawyer. "You brought a sanitation complaint. You didn't bring evidence. You brought impatience. He signed an order narrow and sharp. Injunction denied. Parties will maintain peace. Any further applications must be with real facts, not fear. The hall stays open. Ruth's breath left her like a bird, silent and quick. Noah closed his eyes, swallowed, and whispered, "Thank you," to a woman whose handwriting crossed a decade and saved a room. They stepped into the sun with the order in hand, and the lane looked different, though nothing had changed. Same cracks, same gate, same stubborn sky. Joy ran up waving a drawing she made in class. A yellow door, a line of stick people holding hands, a tiny heart in the frame. "It's our house," she said. "I made the roof big so rain can't chase us out." Ruth hugged her, shoulders shaking with happy tears. "Perfect," she whispered. "You made it perfect." That evening, after the bowls were stacked and the letters on the board were traced one more time, Noah walked to the clinic's back room with Elena and Ruth. He held the brass key above the little lock Lily had labeled and looked at the women beside him. "Ready?" he asked. Elena nodded. Ruth smiled through still wet eyes. "Open it." Inside wasn't money or a secret safe. It was better. It was a blueprint, drawn long ago, updated in pencil and prayer. A phased plan for 3 linked houses, Lagos, Ibadan, Abuja. Each with a reading corner, a nurse table, 2 showers, a kitchen protocol, a job board, and a small music hour for Joy. There were names penciled in the margins. Future volunteers, possible donors, microgrants to chase. There were notes to self like, "Find Mr. Thomas a stool. His back hurts when he reads standing." There were little boxes titled, "After me," with arrows pointing to people who weren't famous and would never try to be. And there was a final section with a line that made Noah grip the table to stay upright. "If Noah finds this, remind him that love is a daily list, not a single headline." They didn't cheer. They got to work. Elena handled permits. Ruth listed items room by room. Shelves, mats, 2 fans, a water heater, a lock for the medicine cabinet, a first aid poster you could read without squinting. Noah called 3 vendors who owed him favors and asked for normal prices anyway. He texted his driver to pick up storage containers and a labeler. He sent a message to his own phone labeled "Tomorrow, 6 a.m., eggs, fruit, soap, notebooks, beans, rice, wipes, smiles." The next morning broke clean and bright. The hall opened early. A nurse, soft-spoken, strong, sat at the corner desk checking inhalers and blood pressure. The reading hour rolled into writing hour. Joy read her own name out loud and grinned like a small son. Mason corrected a younger boy's B and D with patience he had borrowed from Ruth. Mr. Lewis, in his neat shirt, held the new receipt book like a holy thing, not for money but for moments. Neighbors came carrying onions, paper. One even wheeled in a donated mini fridge. The network came alive. 2 calls from Ibadan, 1 from Abuja, each a thread tugging toward a wider fabric. Hayes tried one more blow at noon, not with trucks or fake badges but with rumor. A message spread through the market that the house was a front for another kind of business, the ugly kind that dirties women's names. 2 traders turned away, faces tight. Ruth felt it like a cut. She didn't defend with noise. She called a mother's meeting at dusk. They came, some with arms crossed. Ruth spoke plain. "This place has no back door. If you see a lie, bring it to the rug and we will sit on it until it becomes quiet." She opened the pantry. She opened the ledger. She opened the schedule. Then she pointed to the board where the sentence of the week stood. "Read it with me," she said. Voices joined. "We believe we can learn." She turned to the mothers. "That is all we do here. If anyone tells you different, bring them. We will show them." The rumor died the way truth makes mold die, in light and fresh air. That night the lane felt lighter, like someone had washed it. Noah stood under the gate with Elena and Ruth, the 3 of them quiet in that full way that follows a long day done right. "I thought the miracle would be big," Noah said softly. "A headline, a check, a judge's speech." But it was small. It was napkins with "Believe" written on them. It was a nurse checking a boy's chest. It was Joy drawing a roof. "I didn't know miracles could be this quiet." Ruth looked at him, eyes kind. "Real miracles behave like seeds," she said. "They don't make noise at planting. They shout at harvest." He turned to Elena. "You're staying?" he said, not a question. She nodded, smiling for real this time. "I'm staying. There are houses to reopen and a map to finish. And there is a sister to honor." She looked up at the first small star. She would love this night. They locked the hall, not with fear but with the easy motions of a rhythm forming. Noah walked Ruth to the bus stop because he had learned that lesson and wanted to keep learning it. They stood in the soft street light and said nothing for a full minute. Then Ruth spoke, voice low. You followed me because you thought I might be doing wrong. But you stayed because you decided to do right. Thank you for letting God break your heart in the right place." He swallowed. "He had to use a letter to pry it open," he said. "I'm stubborn." She smiled. "He's patient." The bus exhaled to a stop. She lifted her tote. "Tomorrow, same time. Early. The twins from the next lane want to learn numbers." He nodded. "I'll bring counting blocks." She stepped up, then turned back, eyes bright. "And Noah?" He met her look. "Yes. Don't forget the music hour. People need a reason to smile while they're trying." He laughed softly. "I won't forget." The doors closed and carried her away. He didn't head home. He walked to the clinic back room with the brass key warm in his palm and sat on the little chair by the table with the map and the lists. He opened Lily's journal to a blank page and wrote with a pen that didn't tremble, "Day 1 of the initiative." The door stayed. The food came. The cord saw. The rumor died. The nurse checked lungs. Joy drew a roof. "I remembered how to breathe." He added, "Thank you, not sure where to aim it and sure it would land." The next week passed like a strong song, steady beats, clean notes. Contracts for Ibadan's small hall were signed under the trust. A barber shop in Abuja cleared a back corner for Saturday reading with a laughing promise. Hair in the morning, hope in the afternoon. The company issued its cold statement. The house issued warm bowls. The landlord came by, hands in pockets, stared at the paper chain, coughed, and said nothing. He left a bag of yams on the step the next day with no note. Hayes tried to rent the lane for a stunt and couldn't fill it because the neighbors were busy eating and learning. Sterling sent Noah a line, "Respect the boundary." Noah sent back a line, "Respect the neighborhood." The walls held. And then, one bright Friday, the kind Lagos gives to remind you the world is wide. The door opened and the last visitor who mattered walked in. She was small, hair wrapped in a scarf with sunflowers. Her hands were work-worn. She looked at the photos on the corkboard, the one with the tiny umbrella, the one with wet hair and laughing mouths, and her lips trembled into a smile that had waited years. Ruth gasped. "Mama Ada?" The woman nodded, eyes wet. "I heard the house was alive. I wanted to see the girl my Lily loved and the man she wouldn't stop believing in." She turned to Noah, head tilted, seeing through him the way only mothers do. "She told me you would find your way back when your heart got hungry enough." Noah stepped forward, throat tight. "I got tired of eating from empty plates," he said. Mama Ada took his hand, small and strong. "Then sit. Eat real food. Keep the door." They ate together at the long table, plain rice, pepper stew, laughter. Joy sang a two-line song she made up about roofs and doors. The nurse showed Mason how to keep his inhaler clean. Mr. Lewis presented a tiny brass bell for the reading corner that would only ring when someone read a first sentence. Ruth hung a new sign above the chain, "We are still here." And that family is where we land this chapter and this journey, with the door open, the table set, the lesson written in big letters that even a tired heart can sound out. Love is not a headline, love is a list you keep. If this story touched you, hit that like so more people find it, tell me where you're watching from in the comments, and share this with someone who needs a reason to believe again. Thank you for being part of this house. Please subscribe to this channel to support our growth. Your one click helps us keep the doors open for the next story, the next smile, the next quiet miracle.